Good afternoon and welcome to the Lifestyle Shows with me, Kim Britz, proudly powered by leadershipbydesign.co, leading the charge with insights, information, and ultimately effective results. Joining me in today's marketing and leadership segment, we've got marketing communications expert and co-host Craig Page-Lee. How are you doing, Craig?
Kevin, I'm great. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the intro and welcome again. Good to be chatting. Glad we didn't record this on the 1st. Didn't want to get us caught in any April Fool's blunders or jokes in that regard. But yeah, that said, did you have a good long weekend and quality time with your family?
I didn't know. I was actually moving house, so it was moved into, and that's why there's a slight echo. The echo should be changing over the next couple of weeks. But Mercury retrograde was happening yesterday. I don't know if you heard, and I don't know if you experienced. I mean, I don't follow astrology to the point, but man, did I have a difficult day yesterday. Difficult day in traffic, difficult day in the office. I forgot half my equipment at home, so I couldn't charge my laptop when I went to my client. And
oh no,
I was like, okay, maybe Mercury retrograde does really interfere with life. But other than that, it's been fun and games, yeah. But moving to a nice new space.
Yeah, so I didn't know about the retrograde yesterday, but I had quite a different experience. I had a busy day, but it actually felt like quite a fruitful, full day of achievement. So I'm glad I didn't get caught in some of the negative experiences.
Well, yes, and I need to change my point of view. Yeah, maybe I'm just obsessing about Mercury retrograde. But I mean, Craig, so what are we going to be chatting about today?
Kevin, yeah, before jumping into the conversation, I just wanted to say it was really great conversation last week where we investigated the topic of geolocation marketing or geo-targeting, as many would call it. And it was really great to have the guests on the show, Neil Clarence and Darren van der Schyff, both of Vicinity Media, and giving us some really simple, clear understanding of the principles of geo-targeting and the great value that it brings to organizations. So yeah, great conversation we had.
Absolutely, and what was nice, it's a South African-based company, and if you want to find that out, guys, go and check it out on the actual YouTube channel and the description boxes, because all the information is there. But yeah, it was a fantastic conversation, and I'm glad that it's something that small businesses can use at least. And
yes,
usually we think of large corporates doing that kind of targeting their audiences, but yeah, I mean, for small businesses, I think it's a beautiful option as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting back to today's conversation, I want to introduce a more current and ever evolving, positively negative topic, and that around the principle of return to office mandates, which obviously is being stipulated by many business leaders these days. And general conversation I'm having in my cohort group, this is a topic that's coming up more and more often, and they're very, very mixed views on the topic, Kevin. So I want to reference the article titled "Return to Office Mandates: How to Lose," take note, lose your best performers. The article was written by Brian Elliott and was published on MIT Sloan Management Review on the 20th of March, 2024.
I think it's going to be a fascinating topic to discuss today, because one of the things I've recognized, and when it says, how to lose your best performers, and that's what's interesting about it, is you're kind of putting these rules and things in place when your best performers are doing their best. You're kind of going, well, just let them be, and maybe it should be a privilege that you get to work from home. But it's interesting to see how we unpack this today.
Yeah, well, very much so. And the article specifically looks at what's behind the strive for more time in the office and what it actually takes to build this ultimate definition of an outcomes-based or outcomes-driven organization, Kevin. So let's quick take a look at what's possible these days. So I want to open with a key statement from paragraph 1 here, which notes the following: Recent return to office mandates like those at UPS and Boeing have a simple message. Come back to the office 5 days a week. CEOs are citing productivity as the core reason for these proclamations, Kevin, even in the face of employee resistance. Many executives simply don't trust that employees are effective as possible when managers can't see them at their desks. A very, very big problem. But in a world of globally distributed teams, falling back on management through monitoring is falling back on the weakest form of management. Really important statement, that, and one that drives down employee engagement. There's mounting evidence that mandates don't improve financial performance. Instead, they damage employee engagement and increase attrition, especially amongst high-performing employees, I should say, and particularly those with caregiving responsibilities. So Kevin, question from my side to you, because you dealing with organizations on a daily basis in the leadership and development coaching that you do. What are you hearing and experiencing at face value in these organizations?
So I think there's a lot of truth to the statements, and what I'm seeing as well is employers don't really have enough trust in their staff. But my immediate rebuttal to that conversation is, why not? Why do you not trust your staff? And what type of leader are you that you have not built enough trust in your staff to trust them, right? So it's easy to kind of throw that statement around and say, bring the staff back because we simply can't trust them if we can't manage them and micromanage them. But the question is, especially when it's good staff, when you have people who are performers and top performers, and you simply take the approach of not trusting them, nobody likes that, right? And my immediate question to that leader is, but why don't you trust your staff? And what type of leader are you then? Because then there's a bigger problem here. It's not just your staff, it's trust. And if you don't have trust in the organization, that's a far greater problem than you think.
Kevin, very much so. And I love the fact that you note that it points to something greater. And for me, it very much points to organizational culture. What is the culture of the organization, and why is it breeding these levels of mistrust? And because of that, I thought it's worth us just looking at what organizational culture is for a while, and then picking up on some of the definitions and understanding the importance of all culture, and using that as a reference point for the rest of the article. So the article references that in the following way, and I want to just emphasize on 2 or 3 key points that come out of this particular paragraph that I'm going to read here. It says, there is a better way forward, but it requires culture work at the top as well as deep within the organization, along with a significant upgrade in management philosophy. Now, that's a very important statement, and I want to pick your brain on that in a few minutes as well. Too many organizational cultures use FaceTime at the once as their metric for productivity. And that's definitely not the benchmark, Kevin. Instead, focusing on outcomes while providing trust and flexibility, there's the trust word again, about where and when to get work done, allows individuals and the organization to thrive. And again, it's about directing the employees and providing the guidance and assistance, the where and when to get work done, which allows individuals and organizations to thrive. But Kevin, the significant upgrade in management philosophy, what are you doing or seeing in that particular response in the organizational work that you do?
Craig, to a large degree, most corporates don't have a philosophy.
That's a sad statement. That really, really is a sad reality, I should say.
If you walk into any CEO's office, and yes, I'm making an absolute generalization, but in general, the environments that I've worked in the last 10 years, and doing what I have done in the last 10 years, most leadership teams and most leaders do not have a philosophy of leadership. And that's why on my website, we speak about, the importance of sovereignty and agency. And just to quickly just share that is, sovereignty refers to the individual's inherent right to self-governance and autonomy, and agency, on the other hand, has the capacity to act independently and make choices and exercise one's free will. And that's why it's there. So you have some kind of reference to understand that when you have some kind of philosophy, do you cite that? Do you share that? Do you inform the staff of saying, there's an expectation of you that I do have inherent trust that you are self-governed and you are capable of, self-management, but also acting independently and making choices for yourself. And when when you share this with corporates, they kind of just look at you and, they have that kind of stunned look on their face. It's like, oh, yes, maybe we should have a philosophy, right? And sadly, most cultures don't.
That is quite sad. So to that point, let's then have a look at the meaning and importance of organizational culture. And I came across a really interesting article titled "Organizational Culture: Definition, Importance, and Development." The article was written by Kelly Wong and was published to achievers.com and updated on 28 June 2023. And the article notes the following on what organizational culture is, Kevin. Organizational culture is a set of values, beliefs, attitudes, systems, and rules that outline and influence employee behavior within an organization. The culture reflects how employees, customers, vendors, and stakeholders experience the organization and its brand. And it notes that don't confuse culture with organizational goals or a mission statement. Both can obviously help define it, but culture is created through this consistent and authentic set of behaviors, not press releases or policy documents. And I really like that last reference, all policy documents. And evidence of this is you can watch company culture in action when you see how a CEO responds to a crisis, how teams adapt to new company demands, or how managers can actually correct employees who make mistakes, Kevin.
Yeah, and I love the fact that they mentioned that it's it's not a policy and a procedure. It's an inherent DNA of who are we in this environment, and that's a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we spoke about culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes.
And you kind of like, what is that culture?
So just reflect. I know you like facts and stats as well. I want to just have a look at some points on the importance of culture to an organization. Improve recruitment efforts. Good culture helps improve recruitment efforts. 77% of workers consider a company's culture before applying for an advertised job. It improves employee retention. Culture is one of the main reasons that 65% of employees stay at their job. Culture helps improve brand identity. 38% of employees report wanting to change their job due to poor company culture. Culture improves engagement. Companies with a positive culture have up to 72% higher employee engagement rates, Kevin. The article notes that organizational culture affects all aspects of your business, from punctuality and tone to contract terms and employee benefits. When workplace culture aligns with the employees, they're more likely to feel more comfortable, supported, and valued. And obviously, companies that prioritize culture can definitely weather the challenges, both economic in the business environment, and build a much stronger outcome and more cohesive organization, Kevin. And yet, just to close off on some of these culture statements, culture is a key advantage when it comes to attracting talent and outperforming the competition. A significant percentage of workers consider a company's culture before applying, and almost 50% of employees would leave their current job for a lower paying opportunity at an organization with a better culture. And that's a really important statement for organizations to understand. People are willing to take a step down in salary, but it aligns with their culture and value expectations. And the culture of an organization is also one of the top indicators of employee satisfaction, and one of the main reasons that almost 65% of employees stay in their job.
But I mean, Craig, this is a conversation we've been having for a while already. Around the importance of really just the generations that we see coming up in the ranks. The quiet quitting that we've had as a conversation. The reasons why people want to be in an environment is it's not the same as it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, what I valued was a salary, and I as long as I have a job.
Yes.
The generations working today, they value stuff differently. And if you don't consider that the culture supports what it is, what type of value system you have, what type of philosophy you have within your business, they'll just tell you, well, I don't want to work here because you guys suck. and that's unfortunately, the millennials and then Gen Zers and the ones coming up in the ranks, they're quite blatant about it because they want to work in environments that matter and that they feel comfortable in.
And that, remember 2-3 weeks ago, we really had a great conversation around how me is being placed at the front of we. And, it's organizations really need to understand the needs of that individual of one and ensure that the organizational culture can embrace and make that individual one feel part of the collective. But Kevin, there's a couple of key points to understand why this return to office drive is in place. We've come out to the peak of post-pandemic remote work, and we're definitely seeing a sort of stabilization of some of the hybrid environments, with about 50% of pre-pandemic norms, with people going back to the office. But some CEOs talk about the solidarity that office workers need. Take note, they stating this need to have with frontline workers. Some Gallup research actually refutes this and shows that the strong majority of frontline workers actually aren't bothered by office work flexibility. In fact, they actually want flexibility themselves, including a choice of which days to work, with the option, and this becoming a big trend globally and particularly in Europe, with the option for 4 10-hour days and some flexi time. In other words, equity, not equality. And I really like that final point there. But there's no clear evidence that the mandates to come back actually improve financial performance within organizations. And a study by S&P 500 companies that was conducted by the University of Pittsburgh researchers found that executives are using the return to office mandates to reassert their control over employees and blame employees as a scapegoat for bad business performance. So really not embracing needs, but looking as, finding other opportunities and avenues to push blame back into the organization. And these policies result in significant declines in employee job satisfaction, but no significant changes in financial performance at all, Kevin. And at the end of the day, there's definitely a big stalemate that's arisen out of this. The executives who have instituted these return to office mandates, only 1 in 3 think that it's even had a slight positive impact on productivity. So, again, one in 3, whilst all of these big international organizations are putting these mandates in place, less than 50% are seeing any financial benefit to the organization. So a real big re-question. And that's not surprising to anyone who's been inside an organization during these drives, because they create a lot of internal churn. They're distracting employees and managers from focusing on what matters more, that being the customers. And when you've got that focus in place, customer satisfaction improves. What's next to improve? The bottom line, Kevin. So the uncertainty in many of the conversations with senior executives come down to 2 simple questions. Are people really working when they're at home? And would they work more and get more done if they were in the office? And some of the skepticism is definitely fed through CEOs in these echo chambers and board level conversations, where there are a lot of anecdotes about bad experiences, and these really actually start to feel like trends, which in essence they're not. And CEOs sympathetic to hybrid work really sort of see this as an outsider point of view. And in the words of one chief executive, which was quoted in this article, is, we dread every time CEOs get together. The peer pressure is a real challenge. So there in itself, you can see that actually it's driven from the top down and not really getting to understand the needs of organizations and driving it from the bottom up across the organization, Kevin.
But Craig, it's that the age-old conversation of input versus outcome. What is the outcome that you actually are looking for? And if here's your deadline, and this is what you need to get done by this period of time, just make sure that that's done, and have check-ins about that. When you have the flexibility to do that, and this is just my personal experience in working with people, when you do this, the other scenario is people get busy with busyness. So
yes.
And especially because you're forcing them to be in an environment, they're just walking around and doing this and having coffee and then going for a smoke, and then they're back there and they're just looking busy, right? You don't really know if they're actually busy, right?
That's right. So,
it's the busyness with busy.
Yeah, beware the busy manager, they say often. Yeah. Outcome there. Two key things come to me, and it goes back to the insights around company culture that I've been looking at recently, and that is, it's about alignment. When the company's objectives and the employees' objectives align, there's motivation in place. You get to understand that both are moving in the same direction, and that just is vitally important, because when your vision, purpose, and goals are constantly being nurtured and aligned from both sides, you're going to get positive outcomes. And then the second point for me is it's about appreciation, because when that alignment's in place and you are moving in the same direction, organizations that show and reward good work, show appreciation and deliver to reward and value, you're definitely going to have a lot more buy-in and alignment with the organization again, Kevin. And that it's sort of that award appreciation ties nicely into the next point here, which is performance monitoring leads to the doom loop. And that's quite a powerful statement, the doom loop. So the are they really working question is easily overcome if organizations had actual effective and good ways of managing productivity. But there's a really important statement here, and this goes back to as early as 1969, Kevin, where over the past 50 years, efforts to evaluate productivity of knowledge workers have largely been futile. As Peter Drucker pointed out in 1969, once we automate rote tasks, what's left is creativity, decision-making, and complex problem-solving. Putting a yardstick on knowledge work is hard, and it's usually unsatisfying for both employee and the organization attempting to make the evaluation. But because productivity remains at the top of the stack of executive concerns, according to a recent research by Atlassian, the Conference Board, and Slack, 3 research programs, executives are attempting to measure it through activity. According to the Slack survey, 70% of executives use visible activity, such as what time employees show up, how many hours they're actually logging, as the primary measure of productivity. Notably, the same survey found that on average, employees spend 32% of their time on performative work that gives the appearance of productivity. And that in itself is tying directly into the busyness aspect that you referenced there, Kevin.
Well, I just wanted to note on that 32% of their time, right? If you broke that down into hours per day, right?
Yes.
And you broke that down into rand value or dollar value or whatever you're breaking it down into, the actual value amount. You would quickly realize how much money is being wasted in the 32% of their time. Just as they just look productive, and they're not really productive, right? And 32% of someone's salary you're just kind of paying for the sake of paying because you need to see them. That's a scary kind of stat to work out.
And I think the more difficult step for me to work out is understanding what the dollar value per hour of knowledge work is, because how do you
Yeah.
quantify in a dollar and cents value what each hour of knowledge output equates to in an organization? You can have 1 hour of absolutely shoot the lights out creative knowledge capability thinking delivery that surpasses an entire month's worth of value. So yeah,
Yeah.
a difficult one. The reality is that far too often the combination of this executive anxiety, monitoring, lack of trust, as we mentioned earlier, and having employees perform the metrics of being in the office all contributes to much lower performance, which in this article is referenced as this doom loop. And employees who know that they're being monitored react in a variety of ways. To start off with, 49% of these employees report high levels of anxiety, compared with 7% of people not being monitored. And this is from a study from the Center for Transformative Work Design. And this is definitely not a recipe of getting the best out of employees, Kevin. And again, it's about focusing on productivity, not physical presence. And the article provides a great little reference in the doom loop versus the boom loop. And the doom loop is about monitoring employees, where 49% of employees link this to a high anxiety, as I mentioned. That then leads to the loss of trust. That's a reduction in performance, and you just keep going in this negative spiral. Whereas the boom loop is about focusing on outcomes. It's about providing flexibility. It's evidences of increasing trust. People who feel trusted are twice 200% more effective and productive in their delivery of work. And when this is in place, trust brings you engaged employees, and that's a beautiful, positive, iterative loop there. So definitely you want to flip out from the doom loop into the boom loop, Kevin.
But I mean, in that case, Craig, it just shows you the importance of trust in an environment. If you have trust as part of the culture, it fuels that culture to an elevated environment.
And what's interesting about the doom loop and the boom loop is doom loop talks about performance and metrics. You're performing two metrics, whereas the boom loop talks around increase in trust. So when the increases in trust is in place, you don't have to be monitoring against all of these metrics. It's about that alignment and shared common vision moving in the same direction that I spoke about earlier. And when that alignment's in place, again, the appreciation and the rewards that kick into play there, Kevin. But monitoring is not easy in its own right, Kevin. For employees to perform to the system by scheduling when their emails go out, keeping their status active online when they're not even working is another way that they just hide for those 32% of ineffective hours, Kevin. So while it might seem like cheating the system, employees are just reacting to some of these core issues, which again, going into the doom and loop, boom loop, that lack of trust, Kevin. So at the individual level, lack of confidence that employees will do the right things is corrosive to employee engagement. A Slack survey noted that people who said they felt trusted by their employer reported twice the productivity of those who didn't feel trusted, and they were 30% more likely to say that they put in extra effort at work. Companies that don't exhibit the trust also diminish passion. So yes, why would you want to put in the extra effort, Kevin? And the real impact on these return to office mandates here is that pretty much it's all negative, and it's obvious to see based on the facts that we've just picked up on. The same study found that the return to office mandates had no impact on the financial performance of the S&P 500 companies, and it did find one enduring effect, that significant declines in employee job satisfaction. So forcing people who've been effective at working from home 3 to 4 days a week to now commute to the office instead of being able to have this flexibility definitely had a greater negative impact. 75% that they're not happy with their level of flexibility and that they are going to be looking for new jobs. That's a very, very high percentage for organizations to think that 75% of their staff want to walk out the front door because they've been forced to come back to the office.
I mean, in the document says it's a recipe for grief. Yeah.
Yes.
And you're kind of going, that's a substantial emotional state that you're forcing people into constantly. And over a period of time, you're just going to have a turnaround and attrition of your staff so much, because 75% is ridiculous. That's an insane amount.
But Kevin, it is. If you think that 3/4 of your high value staff may want to leave your organization because you're not providing this option of flexibility, really it's a big question mark that hangs over that organization. A Gartner survey of more than 2,000 office workers found that the group most likely to leave are these high performers, Kevin, and that's why I keep emphasizing this point, where intent to stay in the face of the mandated return to office dropped 16%, compared with 8% for the average employee. So for top talent, the signal is we don't trust you, and that's really important for organizations to understand. These employees are already going above and beyond, and the fact that these policies are now forcing them to come back is overriding what really matters. And again, organizations are just seeing the wrong yardstick here, Kevin. So, the impact is clear. Mandate and monitoring leads to not only decreased employee satisfaction, retention issues, and loss of trust, but also to lower performance. And guess what matters most to the C-suite? Business results. And when performance is bad, the C-suite are the ones who are going to be putting even more pressure on organization, at least the employees, to come into the office. Companies that build trust outperform their peers financially. It's a given. It's proven in multiple studies, and the Institute for Corporate Productivity research showed that employees at high performance companies, organizations that outperform industry peers on factors like revenue growth, profitability, and customer satisfaction, were 11 times more likely to stay, at least to say they had senior leaders and managers who trusted them to do their jobs. There it is. It's as simple as that. Trust and performance comes from building alignment. Again, point of alignment, how to measure results and drive accountability. And that's a collective process. When companies offer trust, flexibility, and focus on outcomes, they see much greater engagement and productivity, which is what the author calls the boom loop in this particular instance. The organizations that have figured out how to do this, Kevin, or are hoping to figure this out, know that clarity around the most important outcomes the organization is trying to drive is the starting point, and getting there requires these hard discussions and decision making at the executive level. And you have to have clear communication both up and down the organization, and we bring communication into the conversation time and time again, because when you're not communicating, there's no way you're going to achieve the alignment. And when you don't have alignment, there's no way you're going to achieve the performance objectives there, Kevin.
But Craig, I think, and just while you, as you're going through this, look, one of the points is, I don't think it's coming from a stance of saying, well, just make this a blanket statement and let everyone just decide for themselves if they want to be there or not. And you've got to trust people because some people, the flip side of that is, human behavior does show us that people are lazy inherently.
Yes.
They don't want to take, because it's not my business. So why should I, I don't really care. I'm just doing this because it's my job and I got to be there. So, maybe pilot the process and pilot, a segment or a section of your business to kind of go, these guys are only coming to the office 4 days a week, right? Because they are meeting the outcomes that desired outcomes for the roles that they're responsible to. And this is why we've given them, that flexibility and ability to kind of make up their minds and decide for themselves and have a philosophy of their own agency and sovereignty, right? But it's not a blanket thing that you need to do, but at least have the cognizance and the awareness of this is something that because I was sitting in the traffic yesterday for 2.5 hours just getting to my client. And you kind of go, okay, the requirement is for me to be there, and this is an agreement that I have, and I'm fine with that. But like when you have to do that every single day, purely based on the fact that because that's what's required of the environment, and you're driving for 2.5, it's 5 hours of your day that's just gone, right? So I think people need to. It's a shift in narrative and a shift in how we navigate the future of work. And I mean that's what the book alludes to as well, is having that space and opportunity to self-manage, to have creativity time, to have critical thinking time. And if we don't do that, we're running our own businesses into the ground.
I love that last reference because it segues perfectly into a key a part of this article, which talks around ensuring you get clarity to what the objectives are. So the long-term purpose of the organization really needs to lead to the near-term objectives and the short-term ways of measuring progress. So when the overarching objectives are understood and you're starting to break it down into those incremental milestones, you're definitely able to then get to understand what the objectives and outcomes are and what needs to be prioritized and what's most important for the organization to accomplish in the short to medium term. And then you're able to understand who's accountable, or at least define who's accountable for what and what performance looks like. And when you have that mapped out, then you can start bringing the flexibility aspect to play, because some individuals are better in a particular mind state than others. Some are performing better at different times of the day in different kinds of scenarios. But when the map of accomplishment and organizational priorities are in place, let that flexibility unlock itself and just have clarity around what those outcomes and priorities are, and allow that flexibility to work with the variety of activities, Kevin. And definitely it's hard for leaders to let go and bring that flexibility in, but an organization that does that definitely knows that giving flexibility to the right path to the outcomes will definitely see performance achievement down the line. And when there's flexibility, employees and trust, employees are going to feel that they are able to ask for help and are able to ask for direction, and definitely put that extra effort in to lead the business in the right direction. It's a given outcome.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Kevin, the company driven by measure outcomes instead of monitoring employees will allow for flexibility about where or even when people work. And most people want some time together with their teams and some time at home. Teams that figure out regularly this particular rhythm that works for them definitely outperform any of the other teams in the organization. And many execs are aware of this, which explains why in another great piece of survey, this by the Conference Board, that noted that 27% of USA CEOs, 30% of European CEOs, and 13% of Latin American CEOs said that maintaining hybrid work is a human capital priority in 2024, whereas only 4 to 6% of CEOs across those regions wanted to drive full-time 5-day-a-week return to the office. Yeah, there it is. Maintaining hybrid work is a human capital priority in 2024.
And I think that in itself, Craig, is a conversation that too few CEOs, leaders in environments have, is the fact that the human capital, they don't see the humans as capital. Let's start there. That's the first, and then to actually prioritize them as the capital to the business, especially when you look at large corporation and purely in South Africa, because I work here, you find that people very specifically, they call it human capital, but it's like, let's just unpack what that means, right? And if you understand that from a human's perspective, as a human, and again, I'm going to reference the book because when you really understand what that means, you really understand that these people are not objects. They're not things that get you to where you want to go. And boards of companies need to also realize that, they just put up the, this is the outcome and this is the ROI that we need. And this is what we aim, because we need, to do better this year. But yet they treat people like objects, right? And the moment that changes, and that's why the trust element goes away, because people are not objects, people are humans. And when you treat people as humans and you build and cultivate a culture that has a leadership philosophy, that has a culture that cultivates trust and encourages people to, open up, and psychological safety, and all of these things that I always lament about. When you have that, and I mean, there are companies that do it really well, and you can literally go into their company and see the success of what those people are achieving based on the fact that they have these fundamentals down, and it works really well.
Yeah, Kevin, absolutely. Yeah, and one of the key points here, let me get rid of this call. Sorry, I'm just there. Is that it all goes back to that organizational culture, and this is my closing statement here, and that really it's just about improving organizational culture by connecting employees' work to a purpose, creating positive employee experiences, being transparent and authentic, scheduling these regular, meaningful one-on-ones, and encouraging frequent employee recognition. Trusting organization with flexibility absolutely enables that to come to bear, Kevin.
So, guys, I think the final question that we have here is the return to office mandates. Are you going to be losing employees? What kinds of decisions are you making about it? Or are you gonna make different decisions to reward people for being able to perform and work from home, right? And that's the wonderful question we have with this. The key for today, guys, is. And I thought this was quite applicable. If everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. And Mr. Old Henry Ford shared that.
Oh, thank you. That's brilliant. That talks directly into the alignment piece. That's fantastic.
Guys, so please remember, please like and share, and tune into the Lunchtime Series every Wednesday and Thursday. For more from myself and Craig, have a fantastic week. Craig, thanks so much, and I will chat to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Have a great week ahead. Thanks.
Cheers.